Dana White's Contender Series starts off with a bang, including a viral knockout by top prospect Kavanagh. But the biggest blow for UFC fans was Dana White saying that Conor McGregor will not fight in 2024. Dana also announced that Sean Strickland will fight the winner of this weekend's UFC 305 main event between Israel Adesanya and Dricus du Plessis. Also, today's guest, we are joined by UFC lightweight Evan Elder, coming off a short notice win at UFC Denver. But first, I'm joined by Inside Fighting's Michael Owens. Mike, how are you? Thank you for joining me. Welcome to the Fight Season podcast.
I'm very well. 2 weeks on the run. You either really like me or you really don't have anyone else to speak to, Jesse, and I can't tell which is which.
It might be a little bit of a combination of both. I haven't decided yet, but I am happy to have you here. And yeah, I mean, so let's just jump into it because I know that you've taken a keen interest in this, and I was super excited last night when Contender Series starts. I don't like to be a Dana White brown noser by any means, but I do have to admit it is some of my favorite UFC content is watching Dana White's Contender Series, and he loves to say it's the best show in television. It got off to a good start last night. Kavanagh knocked out Antoine Ho. Surprising that was the first fight, considering that was such a probably two of the better prospects they'll have this season. Opened up the season, incredible knockout. What were your thoughts on it? Just an incredible moment for Kavanagh, who was automatically as soon as Ho got knocked out, you knew he was in the UFC.
Lona has been a very interesting prospect over here. So he's been somebody who's based in London in GB Top Team alongside Nathaniel Woods, Mark Diakiese, and Simeon Powell, a couple of those big names. He's primarily been in the Cage Warriors circuit down in the shows down in London. So I've never had chance to watch him live, but he's always been this guy who's had immense potential. So to see him get the shot and get called up was great, and then obviously to deliver on that with that knockout in the way that he did. He did have another viral knockout in Cage Warriors. The name of the opponent escapes right now, but he has been somebody who British fans have been really interested and excited about. So really happy to see him get the win. Hopefully we can get him on the show soon. And also interesting that as one British flyweight leaves the UFC, another joins. It almost feels like Lana has maybe taken Muhammad Mokaev's place as the Brit flying the flag at 125.
Yeah, I mean, you just said last week that you think Mokaev's going to be back, so it still remains to be seen about that.
TBD.
Yeah. I mean, it's a true point about the flyweights, just considering that division's so up in the air. We don't really know. Obviously, it still exists, but we don't really know exactly what's going on with it. Who was it that told you that? Who didn't get re-upped on a contract? You just spoke to him. His name is escaping me.
Nate Maness.
Nate Maness, yeah, who said that they were short on knockouts and finishes in the flyweight division. That it's a decision-heavy division essentially. That's a way of getting the attention of people for the flyweight division is a performance like that. So I would imagine that's something that the UFC is looking for to sort of just keep that division around, right?
Yeah, 100%. And obviously always new blood, especially from different regions. I mean, I was obviously making a joke with Mokaev, but I don't think there's another British flyweight. I mean, Jake Hadley had a big win up at bantamweight. He's fought at 125. So obviously getting new guys from different nationalities and new corners of the globe is always interesting. And I think Lanier is, although it's very early, hasn't even made his UFC debut yet. He's one that we as British fans can look at as a lot of potential to do big things in the sport and in the UFC.
UFC 305 is this weekend, a big-time middleweight title fight going down, and we're happy to announce that Inside Fighting has once again partnered up with DraftKings to bring you guys an offer. Or right now, if you're a new DraftKings customer, you can go download the DraftKings Sportsbook app, bet $5 on UFC 305, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets instantly using our promo code Inside Fighting. And if sports betting is not yet available in your state, not a big deal. Go play DraftKings Daily Fantasy Sports. It's my favorite thing to do in DraftKings. Have a lot of fun there. But again, if you want to bet on UFC 305, go download the DraftKings Sportsbook app, and new customers who bet $5 will get $150 of bonus bets instantly using our promo code Inside Fighting. Well, he dealt out a big blow, and then a big blow was dealt to UFC fans immediately after the event because Dana White did a post-fight press conference. We got two nuggets here that we want to break down. One, to start off, is that he was asked about Conor McGregor, which, as you do in these post-fight press conferences, has become just a thing every single time as you ask Dana White the update on Conor McGregor. And this one was interesting because we got this sort of almost like a game plan, like a layout of how the UFC was going to end the year. It looked like it was going to go from Sugar Sean versus Marab at 306. Then it was going to be Topuria versus Topuria versus Holloway at 307, but that got moved to 308.
Yes.
So 307, it looks as of right now, I think it's just Pennington versus
Triana
Pena.
Pena.
We don't have an official main event. That might be the main event. We don't know yet. But and then 309, it is John Jones versus Stipe Miocic. 310 was supposedly the time that they carved out for Conor McGregor. It wasn't officially announced, but that was what Conor was implying. That's what Ariel Helwani was implying. And then Dana White kind of poured cold water on it yesterday, saying Conor is not fighting this year.
And I saw that you and Connor were both in Sturgis. I'm wondering if you guys met at all and talked about the potential of his fight as well?
We talked, yeah. We talked. We didn't meet up, but we talked. And yeah, he wants to fight, so we'll figure it out.
Soon? By the end
Not
of this
this year.
year?
He won't fight this year.
Conor did respond, but before we get to that, are you concerned that this is actually true? Could this be Dana just maybe, I don't know, negotiating tactic? Like, or do you think that this is possibly just Conor's not going to fight this year?
It feels like to me like Dana knows Conor better than any of us do, and knows that he has a fiery temper, and knows that if he says something, he's likely to get a reaction. So if he says Conor McGregor's not fighting this year, it's automatically going to make Conor McGregor more enticed to fight this year. So it could be a little bit of that. It also could be a little bit of the UFC saying, look, we can't trust Conor McGregor to headline a card, especially 4 months out from its actual date. It'll probably be around about 4 months from
Right.
the date we're recording. So there is also an element of the UFC maybe not placing as much trust in Conor McGregor at the moment. But to me, it does feel a little bit like a negotiation tactic from Dana's part, just to maybe remind the notorious one of who really is in charge.
Yeah, I mean, Conor immediately responded. He went on Twitter and he says, Dana, December is the date. Bring the calendar year home with a winning event. Come on, what's this? I'm off to altitude. He says he's off to altitude next month to prepare in December. Tell Dana and the UFC we want December. We deserve December. He said this before. He said that he was doing a training camp in Big Bear. But he said this like a year ago, that he was going to go to Big Bear to do a training camp, and look where we are now. I imagine his toe has healed by now, the one that he broke that caused UFC 302 was it 302? 303 to fall through. So who knows at this point, but poor old Michael Chandler, he also responded to Conor because as soon as Conor tweeted that out, which has been deleted, by the way, which is kind of par for the course with Conor McGregor these days. Once he puts out a tweet, he deletes it about 2 hours later. Michael Chandler says, "Oh, Conor, the sport will move on and thrive without you. Put to bed, laid to rest, soon a distant memory. You've vastly overestimated your importance to the sport, to this game for over a decade. Godspeed." So, what are your thoughts, Mike? Do you think Conor McGregor will fight again? Do you think it's time for Michael Chandler to move on? What do you think? I feel bad for the guy, but I think he kind of has also made his bed that this is a possibility that Conor McGregor would not fight.
I do feel bad for Michael Chandler, but then when I look at other fights for him over this last 2.5 year period, I can't quite see what the path would have been. I mean, it feels like if the Conor McGregor fight doesn't happen for Michael Chandler, that the next obvious options would be Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier, and Charles Oliveira, all of which he has losses to. So he's in a bit of a funny position in the sense of there isn't a particular pivot to move from. And obviously, you know, when we talk about Red Panty Night, we know why Michael Chandler is staying around. So I do feel sorry for him. And having said that, I don't really see what the next play is. And I think it's pretty clear from the way Michael's handled this situation over the last 2.5 years that he knows what everyone else knows, which is he wants to stay in this as long as he can to try and secure that bag. But I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I mean, I also saw that Holloway was a possibility, but that could have been just fan speculation, that with Holloway being the BMF. I don't know how it would have made sense for Chandler to fight for the BMF coming off of a loss against Poirier. It wouldn't have made a lot of sense. It's been coming up in November. It will be 2 years since he lost to Poirier. I'm in your boat here. I don't see a fight other than maybe fighting a guy like Rafael Fiziev, fighting a guy like, but then that's not like a big.
But then
that's
you're
not-
going back to the contendership
Yeah,
route, and if you lose to Fiziev, then not only is that fight gone forever, but those super fights are kind of in jeopardy. With the other super fights with Poirier and Gaethje are also in jeopardy. So he's in
I
a bit
think
of a predicament.
I think he knows that he's lucky in the fact that even after losing to Poirier, he still was considered for the McGregor fight to begin with. A guy that beat McGregor twice, even though obviously the last time was on broken leg. But the fact that he was even getting this opportunity to fight McGregor at all is something that very few. I feel like if this fight were on any of these other lightweights plates, they'd probably be waiting out in the same way.
Yeah.
I think Michael Chandler is going to wait this out until he's 40 years old if he has to, and he's just going to retire off of it. But who knows?
Is there a pivot? Do you envisage a pivot to 170? I mean, could you see a Michael Chandler versus Gilbert Burns, a Michael Chandler versus Colby Covington, Michael Chandler versus a return and Jorge Masvidal? Would any of those fights could you squint and see those possibly happen?
I could see it happening, but the McGregor fight is going to happen at 170. That's the other thing of this, is that was the established weight for the fight was 170. So, yeah, maybe I could see Chandler. But again, would you really give Chandler like one of like the top 10 for a potential title fight? I doubt it. Like a title eliminator, I doubt it. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe Masvidal makes sense.
Possibly.
That would make sense. We shall see for Michael Chandler. I hope he gets that fight. I don't want to see him never get that fight. Also, just for us fans, I feel like I would have been wasting a lot of my mental energy if we never get that fight. I've made a lot of posts about it, Mike. I feel like I've wasted a lot of mental energy on this.
I do have this theory though, Jesse, sometimes, which is as a fight drags out longer and longer, the interest goes down because people have already done so many predictions, done so many breakdowns that people almost get bored of theorizing and predicting that fight. And I do feel like we're getting close to that stage where people would be more enticed with a Conor McGregor return against a Poirier, a Gaethje, or an Oliveira than they would against this fight that they've had shoved down their throats for the best part of 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of what people were saying about this fight this weekend at 305 with Dricus and Izzy, is that it was really hyped up, and then Izzy lost to Strickland, and that fight kind of maybe lost a little bit of steam. I'm still excited for this fight. Speaking of which, in the same post-fight interview, Dana White, earlier in the day, before Dana White's Contender Series, Dana White was on the Jim Rome show, and he says that Sean Strickland will get the winner of UFC 305 between Izzy and Dricus du Plessis. Sort of reaffirmed it in the post-fight at Contender Series, but also said that Khamzat versus Whitaker is also another potential option, which I think this is where like the debate is happening. There's like a sort of a fork in the road with UFC fans in terms of who actually deserves this shot. Whitaker's coming off of a win over Costa, knocking out Ikram Aliskerov, whereas Strickland's coming off of also beating Costa, right? So now, by the way, Sean Strickland did share our graphic that he will be getting the title shot. So in your mind, I'm of the belief that Strickland deserves it unless Whitaker like knocks out Khamzat Chimaev. That's my belief. Do you feel like this is the right course of action for the UFC to give Strickland the winner of this fight, or do you feel like it's still very much up in the air as most situations are?
I feel like if Khamzat Chimaev beats Robert Whitaker, Khamzat Chimaev gets the next title fight.
Okay.
If Robert Whitaker beats Khamzat Chimaev in a decision, Sean Strickland gets the next title fight. If Robert Whitaker stops Khamzat Chimaev, Robert Whitaker gets the next title fight. It all hinges not only on that fight at 308, but also the method of victory, i.e. if it goes to points, it could be a much more different result. And Sean Strickland could be a much more luckier man, because it is a very, very interesting scenario how you could argue, that Robert Whitaker's win over Paulo Costa was more impressive than Sean Strickland's win over Paulo Costa. Yes, Robert Whitaker would have another win over Ikram Aliskerov and another win over Khamzat Chimaev to be denied a title shot. So I think a lot hangs in the balance with that co-main event at UFC 308 in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, and I agree. And I mean, some of it also might depend on what happens in this fight this weekend. It's possible that if it's like a boring Dricus du Plessis decision win, does the UFC want to go with Strickland versus DDP again, you know, which is a potential decision win. There's a lot of those factors that are here. I'm of the belief that if you're the number one contender, that number should mean something. And if you get a win over another, you know, top 10 guy waiting for a title shot, it should mean something. But I mean, if you ask all the Sean Strickland fans, they are pretty adamant that Strickland deserves it. So we'll see. It's a very interesting situation. But we are being joined by Evan Elder, UFC lightweight. He is hopping on the podcast right now.
Yo, there he is.
What's up,
Hello,
guys?
Evan.
Can you hear me?
How are you?
I'm doing good, man. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for giving us some of your time.
Oh, absolutely, man. Good to hear from you.
Good to hear from you too.
Nice to meet you, Evan. I'm
Evan, this
Jesse.
is Jesse. Jesse, this is Evan.
Nice to meet you, Jesse. Thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to the Fight Season podcast. Evan Elder coming off of a big win versus Darius Flowers, UFC Denver, short notice win. Just sort of how are you feeling? What are your emotions like coming off of such a crazy situation, but also just a great performance?
Thank you, man. Yeah, you know, just happy to get back in there. I was out for about a year. No particular reason, you know, UFC just hadn't fought me. So felt good to just take advantage of the opportunity given, you know, it was only 4 days notice. And, but you know, I really do. I try to live this stuff, you know, as much of a lifestyle as much as I can, you know, so, you know, as cliche as it is, you know, stay ready so you don't have to get ready and just be ready for every opportunity you get. So super happy to get back in there. It was really nice. It was my first fight in front of or in an arena since being in the UFC. All my 3 previous fights were in the Apex. So being in front of an arena full of fans was next level.
I've heard a few fighters say this, Evan, and I'm interested to get your thoughts that the real UFC debut comes in front of fans, because we did see throughout the pandemic people make 5, 6, 7 appearances in the UFC and the Apex, and then they talk about this much different experience in front of the crowd. Was it like that for you in front of the Denver crowd?
You know, I feel like I always perform better with a crowd. I just love it. You know, it's like we're here to put on a show. You know, I'm not only trying to win fights. I'm trying to be, you know, one of the most entertaining guys on the roster. So having the fans there to kind of feed off that energy is like extra dope. So it was definitely a little bit of a shock for sure, walking out and just being like, damn. This is much bigger than anything I've done before, but I thought it was sick. You know, I could totally see why people say that that's like your first real, you know, that's a first real fight. It's like UFC debut all over again. So, but no, I thought it. You know, I'm sure there was a little bit of extra nerves, but at the same time, I feel like I fed off the energy at the same time. So a little bit of a give and take.
You know, the rumor is right now that the UFC is, well, I know that it's not a rumor. They're out doing a bunch of construction there at the Apex. So it's going to be shut down for a little bit, I believe. It looks like they might be, Mike, you might know that they might not be doing any events there for a while. And there's obviously a bunch of fans who believe that Apex events should just go in general. Like, do you enjoy the Apex as an aspect of being a professional fighter in the UFC? Do you think that they should get rid of it? What are your thoughts on it, like overall?
Yeah, I actually really like the Apex. I disliked it a lot at first because it's so weird. You know, it's just like fighting during COVID. I only had one actual fight during COVID. Excuse me. And that was for LFA. It was like my 4th pro fight or something like that. And it was super weird because it was, you know, it was like you walked out and there was no anything. Like there was no energy, no excitement. It was just like, we about to fight? I don't know. But I actually like the Apex now. I think it's for one thing I really like about the Apex is well, a bunch of things actually. But the one of them being you can hear your corners really well. So that helps a lot. Being in the crowd, dude, it's like way harder. It's way more hectic, way more chaotic because you can't really hear the good advice your corner's giving you, stuff like that. But also I really like I had a lot of people tell me during the pandemic, they're like, dude, we knew fighting was like tough and everything, but we never knew how brutal it was because like during the pandemic, you could hear, I mean, it's dead quiet. So when people are landing body kicks, like you just hear the smack. And when, I mean, just people just throwing punches, and when it's landing, you're like, oh my gosh, so I feel like you kind of get a little bit more of the full effect of what it's like to be inside the cage, even from an outside perspective. And also it's just an easy day in the office. No fight's an easy day in the office, but you show up, everything's right there. It's like, I mean, it is literally just a fight factory. It's like walk right in, get straight to warming up. And then just walk right out. The arena was super huge. You had all kinds of stuff to walk through, and had a different feel for sure. But yeah, I think the Apex is cool, but if they did away with it, I wouldn't be devastated. But at the same time, I think that it's pretty practical, especially now, me being out here in Vegas. I kind of like the idea of having the Apex. I could just be right down the street having a fight.
Yeah.
So Evan, obviously,
Okay.
sorry, Jesse, come on.
You're good. No, you're
I was
good.
just about to say, so obviously you get this fight. We've seen a lot with the likes of the Dan Ige situation at UFC 303 about the benefits and the drawbacks of not having a camp. I think the drawbacks are pretty clear, which is you haven't prepared for the guy and maybe you're maybe not as fully fit. But talk to me a little bit about some of the benefits that you feel you had going into a fight on 4 days' notice.
One of the big things for sure was, fighting up a weight class, not having to kill yourself to make weight. Man, I think people, they might not fully understand how hard the weight cuts are. You being there for some of them, I'm sure that you really understand how much of a toll it takes. I mean, dude, I feel like we're pretty much knocking on death's door for the most part. Whenever we go to weigh in and then, rehydrate, refuel, rest, and then get to work the next day. But it's pretty crazy, pretty severe trauma, we put our body through the day before. So not having to go through that, I feel like made the whole process just more enjoyable. I was just super excited to fight. I was just focused on the fight. I had to cut weight still. I still had to cut like 9 pounds because I was about 179 when they called me. But cutting 9 pounds from 179 and cutting 9 or 10 or 12 pounds from 168 to 155 is a lot different. You're way healthier. Your body's much more willing to let go of the weight. So it's not nearly as bad, but that's one of the huge advantages. I think I would imagine I prefer now, I definitely prefer just having an actual camp because you can on the mental side of things just visualize. I'm really big on visualizing, just mentally preparing, walking through, trying to be in the environment before I'm even there, just in my mind, get a bunch of reps of being in the arena or being in the apex, whatever, getting in the cage, all that stuff. So you don't really get to prepare your mind as much because you just haven't had the time. You don't have the reps from it being short notice. But at the same time, I've also heard a lot of fighters, they kind of struggle with that, dealing with all the nerves leading up into it. So I feel like for a lot of guys, it would probably be a lot easier just to be like, oh, shoot, I'm just going to fight, because really, I don't remember who it was. Maybe it was Seneca. They said, more often we suffer in imagination than we do in reality. So it's like the problems we create in our mind are actually worse than what actually ends up happening in reality. So if we could just get in there, we realize, oh yeah, it's just fighting. We do this every day. Obviously it's a little more extreme because we're really trying to kill each other, but we hype it up sometimes to be much, much bigger than it is because it's like our life's work. We want it to go well. So we put way more pressure on ourselves and all this extra stuff. So, all kinds of pros and cons as always with anything in life, but that was, a few I could think of off the top of my head.
Absolutely. I feel like just those weight cuts, look, I would never do it. I'll be honest. I would never want to do it. So all the respect in the world. And I imagine it's like you said, it takes a little bit of the pressure off knowing that you don't have the time to think about it for like over a 4 to 8 week training camp. You have 4 days. You just have to stay focused. It might be easy to distract yourself a little bit in that regard, right? A little bit less to think about.
Yeah, for sure. Like I was saying, dude, I mean, the biggest thing is, I think, you know what, now that I'm thinking about it, though, it completely depends on the person because for me personally, I'm much better now to where I don't let the nerves bother me as much. The anticipation, because the nerves are always there. The nerves are always going to be there. You know, even walking out this time, especially my first arena fight, I felt, you know, a little bit extra nerves. But I don't think that's never necessarily even a bad thing. It's whether or not you can channel it and guide it and use it as a source of energy, as opposed to letting it consume you. But so I guess it would really just it would depend on what kind of fighter you are mentally, as
Right.
far as, you know, if you handle that pressure leading up into the fight. So for somebody like myself, I like to but you can make yourself nervous just thinking about the fight. You know, that's why we struggle a lot leading up into the fight. It's just, even every time we think about it, heart starts racing, you get butterflies, and you're just like, a lot of times it's uncomfortable. You know, it makes you really uncomfortable, so you try to just avoid it. You're like, you know, I don't want to think about that. But for me, I'm just like, oh no, I mean, that's exactly what we're trying to do. I'm trying to get comfortable in being uncomfortable, so I get more time to spend thinking and putting myself in that uncomfortable situation. So by the time that uncomfortable situation actually arrives, it's not nearly as uncomfortable. So I prefer having the time to be able to visualize, kind of, you know, more or less meditate on the whole situation and the fight itself. But also at the same time, you know, it's like, whenever you get that short notice fight, like you were saying, it's just like, there's no time to think. It's like, yo, just pull the
Yeah.
trigger. Let's go. It's time to work.
So what's next for you? What's going on? Are you got anything lined up? Are you targeting anything? What's the next step for you?
Yeah, I don't have anything confirmed right now, but I definitely want to fight at least one more time before the end of the year. I was really hoping to maybe get two, but I see now it might be kind of that might be kind of asking for a lot. So we'll just have to see how it goes. But man, honestly, I'm really not, you know, with the fight game. I feel like we're so uncertain. That's one of the hardest parts about this sport, is just kind of the uncertainty. But right back to work. I feel like I had a really hard sparring day yesterday, and I was like, it was a tough day back. I just drove home to Missouri from Vegas, which was like 24 hours. So I just got back Monday, and then sparred super hard Tuesday. And it was a tough first day back, but I was like, dude, I feel like I'm already in fight shape. I try to just, like I said, I try to live in a fight camp as much as possible. So there really isn't too much of an extreme difference from in camp to out of camp. So
Right.
I'm ready for, if they call me short notice again. You know, the biggest thing is always, I'm kind of I'm on the bigger end of the 55ers. You know, at least that's what, whenever I did all the testing at the PI, that's what they told me. So you know, like right now, probably like 183, 84. So making 55 short notice is the only thing that would keep me from being able to fight short notice. But
Right.
if I can I'll take, you know, if 55ers need, you know, somebody falls out and they need to fill a fight, if they want to do a catch weight at 65 or even just move up to welterweight, I could fight whenever. So I'm staying ready for another short notice opportunity. But hopefully we can lock in something for like end of October or early November.
Have you got a card in mind? Have you got a card that ideally you'd like to fight on, maybe a location or an arena?
Dude, really, the only one I would say, I saw, is it October 26th is the Abu Dhabi?
Abu
Max
Dhabi.
Holloway. Yeah, dude, that would be sick. I would hate to. My family would be pissed because it would be a hard travel for them, and they're just, they haven't really a lot of my family hasn't been able to go to my fights because they've all been in the Apex, and they're like $1,500 a ticket, you know. So everybody's waiting for me to fight in an arena, and then I finally do, but it's on 4 days' notice, so nobody could make it. Yeah, I still had a couple people that made it, but anyways, going to Abu Dhabi would be sick. I think just going for the experience, you know, seeing the culture and that card is insane. So just getting a fight on the card with such legends and everything else would be super dope. But other than that, man, I don't care, man. I'll fight anybody, anywhere, anytime. Just trying to just try to be the best I can, you know. So taking every opportunity as it comes, and never too fixated on any certain you know, fight card or location or whatever. It's just like, you know, I'm just gonna, tell me when, tell me where. I'm gonna do my best to be there.
Love it. Well, we got a big card this weekend, UFC 305. Actually, kind of a big fight in your division is going down on that card. It's a Hooker versus Gamrot. Just curious what your thoughts are on that fight. Obviously, Gamrot's probably one of like the few guys that might be in line for a title or a potential title shot after Sarukian. What are your thoughts on that fight? Who do you got?
And that fight's really interesting. Dude, Mateus Gamrot is just such a nasty level wrestler, just grappler in general. With that being said, I feel like he shoots a lot. He's like a wrestler, so he's okay with wrestling on a really low level down on his knees. So when he shoots real low a lot of times. And Dan Hooker throws really good knees, just bringing him straight up to his chest to kind of keep him right in between you and him. And I could really see Dan Hooker catching him with a knee with Gamrot shooting in, Dan Hooker being so long, kind of keeping him on the range and then giving him enough time to see that shot coming in and landing a big knee and KOing him. But at the same time, I do think Mateus Gamrot's probably a different level grappler than Dan Hooker. So if he gets him down and secures good position, I could see him being able to win rounds, steal rounds like that, and even potentially finish him. Dan Hooker is as tough as they possibly come. So I don't think that he's going to probably get ground and pounded. So Mateus Gamrot would probably have to sub him, but I also don't really see that happening. I don't think that Dan Hooker is going to give up a submission to Gamrot. So I could see it possibly being 3-round decision victory for Gamrot or KO by knee, most likely for Dan Hooker.
I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, Evan, but is there a dream fight for you at 155? Like, is there a fight when you look at these rankings or when you look at the rest of the division? And I know that you're still early in your UFC run, but is there a fight where you go, if I could have it one day, Evan Elder versus that guy is the one that I want?
Evan Elder versus anybody for the belt. It's like I don't care who it is. If we're fighting for the belt, man, we're seeing who's the best in the world. So if that's me fighting for the belt, I've climbed the ranks and now trying to compete as the number one best fighter in the world at that weight division, and hopefully even pound for pound one day. So no real dream matchup. I feel like in this game, man, you got to fight anybody and everybody. So I don't have anybody, one particular name in mind, but like I was saying, anybody for the belt, because that means I've most likely climbed the ranks, earned my spot as the number one or number two guy in the division.
I'm curious about this. So I did a little thing on this start time for this weekend's card. The prelims start at 7 a.m. in Perth. And this is coming off of last week or the last pay-per-view where the UFC 304 ended at like 5:30, 6 a.m. So everybody had to stay up super late. Just out of curiosity, like you as a fighter, like obviously it's two different scenarios because if you're on the main card, you're fighting later in the night, where if you're on the prelims, you're fighting earlier in the morning, right? Izzy and DDP are fighting like 12:30 p.m. at like noon or something, so they're fine. But like as a fighter, would you rather fight at 7 in the morning, or would you rather have to like stay up all night and then fight at like 5 a.m.?
Dude, that's tough. I don't know, man. That's pretty shitty both ways, honestly.
Yeah.
Like that's just there's already, dude, I love this sport so much, man, because it's like I know I'm probably completely biased, but I really feel like there's not many things harder to be great at in the world than this sport, and but one of the things that makes it so difficult is the ridiculous amount of variables that go into every single fight. And this is it would just unfortunately be another variable that you really have to strategize and plan for. That would be a hard one to take a short notice fight for, just because I feel like there would be a huge benefit to properly adjusting your circadian rhythm, making sure you're waking up. Depending on, like you said, whether it's super late, or early in the morning, you kind of need, at least for a couple weeks, I would imagine at least 2 weeks, try to get on a normal routine to anticipate, being able to peak. Because it's going to be hard if you roll out of bed even if you set an alarm and wake up super early, if you got to fight at 7 a.m., that means you got to be at the venue at like 5. I would imagine you got to be at the venue at like 5 a.m. So you're getting up by 3, 4 at the latest. So yeah, that's a tough start time. So it would take some adjusting, getting used to that. But yeah, I don't really know, man. You know what? Also at the same time though, I think it's dope because it's just like it's never just a test of who's got the better skills. It really isn't. Like it's only that way in the gym. It's only that, like, that's what we have. So there's so many guys that are just like unbelievably talented in the gym. They have all the skills, but when you add in all the extra variables, the weight cut, the weird times that you might fight, injuries that might happen, all the, family stuff, you just add in the entirety of the fight. And then of course the pressure, the fight nerves, the fans, the the ferocity of the fight. You know, it's like it's a lot different than training. There's an ill intent whenever you're fighting, and when you factor all that stuff in, man, it's just like that's what to me it really separates people in the cage as opposed to like in the gym. So it would just be another variable that you have to prepare for and see who's better at overcoming and dealing with those situations.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I guess, I don't know, Mike, you got anything?
I've got one for you, Evan, and knowing you as I do, I imagine you've watched your fight back at least a couple of 100 times. But one thing I did want to mention, Dominic Cruz was very, very complimentary of you throughout the fight, and he was complimentary of you in your last win as well. I imagine it must have been nice to hear and receive that praise from an MMA legend.
Oh, dude, man, that's yeah, that absolutely means the world to me. Uh, yeah, it feels. I mean, it's great hearing any of those guys, you know, speak highly or you know, compliment the stuff that you're doing, especially because like it's those are the guys that understand this stuff better than anybody, you know, better than I do, you know. So it's like to see them saying that, you know, I'm on the right track or you know, complimenting technique or whatever. Really, it definitely is. It's nice to get the reassurance because there's so many levels to this sport. Every single time I think I'm doing something right, I find a better way to do it, you know, and then a better way to do it, and then a better way to do it. So to hear that, you know, from their perspective of like they've climbed and achieved the top levels of this sport, and to hear even from their perspective that like the stuff looks pretty good, that's always really nice, you know, just to you know that I'm on the right path and stuff. So yeah, no, dude, I mean it's always great, but you know, also take that with a grain of salt because let's see, but you know, hopefully it goes the same way the next time. You know, you can't rest on your laurels and just you know be like, oh yeah, Dominic Cruz said I was good this last fight, so I must be good. It's like, well, you better keep working because you got a long way to go still, and hopefully you do the same thing the next fight because it's real easy to have an off night. It's real easy to not perform the same. You see that a lot. You know, guys look great one fight and then look terrible another fight and then they're good again and then they're bad. It's like because it's just all those variables, man. It's you just better hope that you put everything together on that night.
Yeah. Next thing you know, you might have to fight at 5 a.m. and you never know.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
I actually, the one thing I did want to ask, in your division, there's a little bit of question going on about what's going to happen with the title fight because Islam might be out for a while. He's got a broken hand, or supposedly a broken hand.
Really?
Something's going on with his hand. So there might be a potential for if Gamrot wins this fight, there might be a potential for an interim fight with Arman Sarukian. What are your thoughts on just like sort of where the status is of your division right now?
I'll be honest with you. This is the first I'm hearing of
Okay.
the
All right.
Islam being out. So
Yeah.
I didn't even know about that. I'll be honest with you. I do a pretty poor job sometimes. Yeah, I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing. It's probably, you know, it's a good thing to me. But you know, just staying off my phone, off of social media, stuff like that. You know, I'll get on there. I try to do my best. I treat it like a job. You know, I post as much as I can, but a lot of times I'll literally just get on there, post something and get off. So you know, sometimes I do a pretty bad job of like staying up to date on like what's actually going on. But yeah, so Islam being out for a little while, you said Arman Sarukian. I mean, I think Arman Sarukian is undeniably next up for the title. I mean, that dude is I've been high on that dude for forever. He's one of my favorite fighters to study. I think he's just such a skillful tacticianer everywhere. You know, he's just like obviously, you know, I think his greatest attribute is his grappling. He's just got, you know, super crazy high level wrestling, but he's also got the ground and pound with it, the submissions. But his striking's really clean too, you know. So it's like this dude can do everything, just like a world champion should. You know, it's exactly what you would expect out of a world champion. He's literally world class everywhere. So I think that he's undeniably next up. And if he's got to fight, you know, Mateus Gamrot or you know, would that put I mean, would this put Dan Hooker in that interim? I wouldn't imagine, but
No.
I mean, if he wins, you know, it's kind of a weird situation. Because if Mateos wins, I could see him also being next up. You know, him and Armin fighting, but I don't think that necessarily puts Dan Hooker in, you know, even interim title shot contention. So so I guess it would the predicament would really only be if Mateos wins, and Mateos Gamrot wins, and who would Sarukian fight other than that? You think?
That's the thing.
You could do a Charles rematch. You could do the Poirier fight. You could maybe squint and do Gaethje. maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, that is kind of a weird hang up because all those guys just had their shot,
Yeah.
Well, wait, did Gaethje hasn't fought Islam, but
But he just lost to
lost
Holloway,
to
a
Max.
featherweight,
Holloway.
so.
Yeah. Yeah, that's weird. That's weird. I guess that's one of the problems with having like kind of like odd fights, not specifically for the rankings, because then it'll kind of jumble that up a little bit, I guess. But I'll be honest, man. I mean, all those dude, anybody there's a gigantic difference between like even where I'm at. Like, dude, I haven't done nothing yet. There's a giant difference from even just making it to the UFC and then getting to the top 15. There's a huge skill difference. There's a big discrepancy there. And then even amongst the top 15, it's like I feel like every five, it changes too. It's like the top, the 15 to 10 and then 10 to 5 and then 5 and up. Each one, from 5 to up, I feel like it's anybody's night. Whoever shows up the best that night, and then but any of those guys, really, I'm sure anybody could probably fight for the title. Being in top 15, everybody's got a chance. But yeah, I think Arman Sarukian's definitely got to be next up, and I think him and Mateos is probably the fight to make. If given he wins against Dan Hooker, and it is especially interesting because actually Mateos Gamrot and Arman Sarukian is one of my very favorite fights to study. It is like one of the most. One of the most high-level mixed martial arts fights I've ever seen in my whole life. Absolutely insane. So I would love to see those guys run it back.
I agree. Islam Arman is actually a good fight too. Their first one. I think it was 3 rounds.
Heck
That was
yeah.
a
I don't think
one.
Arman's had a bad fight. I really
He
don't.
hasn't.
I think when you look through his record, it's either finishes or dominant performances, or even in his losses, are both. Those two, I think there was only 2 losses if memory serves, but every single one.
Who else did he fight? Who else did he lose other than Islam? Oh, Mateos. He lost that Gamrot fight.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's only 2
Yeah, I kind
losses
of thought he
in-
won that fight too.
Me too.
Yeah. I mean, it was razor thin, so judges really do have a hard job. That's actually a good question too. I don't know if you guys, if you got time to bring that up, but the judging system, I really think that we could do, a different, better job, with that.
How so?
I kind of think, I don't know how practical this would be, but I was just thinking about this the other day. I feel like, this would be way more intricate, but it's the UFC. I feel like, if you look at like the NFL, look at how many cameras they have, and the UFC has all the cameras and everything, but how many officials are on the field, how many people they got, reviewing tape, like there's so many people at work to make sure everything goes absolutely right. And I know the UFC is the same way, but implementing even more judges to where, I don't know if you would even need to keep them cage side. You might be able to, keep the 3 regular cage side judges just to stick with, what's already been going on. And then, but also having a couple judges in a room outside of, not being affected by the fans, by the, the excitement, just completely watching the from the screen, from the monitor, so they probably have the best view. For me personally, especially even just being in the corner and stuff, sometimes it's hard sitting down there right next to the cage. There's sometimes you don't have the right, you don't have the best, and I'm sure I know they have the cameras there also, but it would be cool to have a couple people cage side, 3 judges probably cage side, and then another 3 to 5 even, in a room, and give them the ability to go back and even rewind to see if while certain judges are currently like watching intently on the fight at hand, a couple other judges going back and being able to replay the moments in the fight that have already happened to see if they were even really significant. Because I feel like it's really, really hard sometimes. Like you're watching strikes. Think about how fast you throw punches. Boom, boom, boom. Sometimes it looks like strikes land and you go back and watch it and it like really just glanced off his shoulder and like really didn't really land. So shots that might seem, in a really close round, somebody lands what seems like a big shot, hits somebody in the shoulder, but it, turns their head. It looks like it lands.
Right.
And it's like, if you had the chance to go rewatch that on the tape before you allowed that to sway which way you're seeing this fight going, it might change the outcome of the fight. Just stuff like that. But this is all speculation, but so I guess to sum all that up, keep a couple judges cage side, and then put maybe another, couple judges, 3 to 5 to 10, whatever, they could afford, whatever, put them in a room with, not being affected by the fans, not being affected by the craziness of the fight itself, just
Right.
objectively watching from the screen and trying to pick apart what exactly is going on and who's actually scoring.
I love that idea. I think it's great. I think you could get 2 judges, 3 judges to judge each round for all I care. Just have them, look at the video replay. I mean, that's that they do in baseball. They'll replay everything. Would you have AI? Maybe we'll have AI judge a fight one of these days.
Probably, man. You see,
Yeah.
PFL is already doing that, I believe.
Yeah.
Mm.
Oh, are they? I didn't know that.
I think so. Don't they do that?
They have some
Mike,
kind
have
of
you seen that?
technology with
Yeah.
the cage. I don't know about specific AI, but they also have the ref glasses that
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of picks up strikes. So they're doing little things like that.
I think they have before the decision's being read, they have like 3 or 4 boxes down at the bottom of the screen, and it's showing who picked who is winning the fight. And there's one of the boxes that says AI scoring, I believe. So it doesn't actually affect the way of the fight, because it just goes to the 3 judges. But it just still puts in its input, which is just kind of interesting. But yeah, now that I'm thinking, as I was kind of thinking that idea out loud about the judging and the scoring. I almost wonder too, because I mean, if we're talking about scoring a fight, it only matters if it goes to decision. So I kind of feel like having judges to go back and rewatch rounds as they happen. So say round 1 goes through, right? In between rounds, you already have maybe 1, 2, 3 refs, whatever, that are now disengaged from the fight, and they're just going to go back and rewatch that first round and make sure it's scored correctly. And then as the second round's going on, then they can go back and rewatch the second round while the third round's happening. Make sure that round is scored correctly. Because, I mean, think about how many times, at least for me personally, and maybe it's different for judges because that's their actual job. For me, a lot of times it's hard for me not to I'm always kind of just analyzing technique, enjoying the fight. I'm not just judging the fight, a lot of times. So, but it's hard for me to I'll watch a fight and I'll be like, oh yeah, I have to go rewatch that to really see who won, to give my accurate opinion on who objectively won. So maybe having a judge, even if it's just one guy, one judge, but I would imagine, you'd probably get 3 judges go back and rewatch the first round as it's happening, or even just the most significant parts of the round. You don't even have to watch the whole 5 minutes, but go straight to clip the most significant parts of the round. Make sure you're analyzing those correctly,
Right.
and then do that all the way through, just to ensure. Because man, it's there's been some pretty bad ones. There's been some, and it's not a little thing. Oh yeah, it sucks. You probably should have won the fight. It's dude, you just left with half of your money. You have a permanent loss on your record. You just possibly changed the whole trajectory of your current career, at least, of who you're going to fight next. I mean, so it's a pretty big deal to make sure we get the decisions right. And of course, I also kind of take the stance of we should take it upon ourselves to try to make sure it doesn't go to the judges' scorecards, right? But it's much easier said than done, especially at an elite level.
I'm all in. All right, you sold me. Let's overthrow the whole damn system, guys. Let's do it. Evan, that was great. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate your time. That was awesome. Thank you for doing it on short notice. Mike, I know it's late for you over there, so you're gonna you can get some sleep soon. But thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, man. I appreciate you guys,
Yeah.
and hopefully we can do it again soon.
Absolutely.
Pleasure's
All
all
right,
ours. Evan, always a pleasure. And by the way, before we let you go, next time I come to Las Vegas, we need a new spot because we can't go for the same sushi place we went to 2, if not 3 times again. So keep your eye out for new spots when I head back to Las Vegas.
Brother, why not the same spot? I go there all the time.
I can't travel halfway around the world to go for the same place
All right.
again.
That's fair.
If you're in
That's
LA,
fair.
go to Sugarfish. Go to Sugarfish in Los
we
Angeles. It's the best.
Okay.
I'm telling you. Yeah.
Okay.
It's really good. Really good.
Heck yeah. All right, boys. I'll talk to you
All right.
later, okay?
Peace out.